So part of the fun of us, what we do in our writing process is we go to those moments of explosion, those moments that we really find compelling, and then we go back and say, how can we justify getting there? So there's no way a character can't make this reprehensible decision or this insane choice in this moment. It's the only thing available to them. And so we sort of walk our process that way, and it's really fun to sort of map how far we can push the audience and have them still stay on.
Yeah, it's like emotional subterfuge. That's just Kyle not knowing how to act.
Now I'm just thinking, like, how many times did I just move my hand?
That's one of the first things they teach
conversation.
That was one of the first things they teach in acting class, but Kyle wasn't there that day.
Yeah.
So he was just like,
I
his
missed
hands.
it.
Okay, you know he's sitting right here. Okay, just he can probably hear you now.
And I think it's something we talk about a lot, which is like, who are the kids and who are the adults in the movie? And I think the kids are pretty adultish and the adults are pretty kiddish, and it flips back and forth. And I think that's part of the fun of the dynamics at play is who's being a kid right now and who's being an adult, and no one's sort of the same at the right time. It's so visceral. You go back and watch any Chaplin, you watch all these old movies, and it's instant. I'm laughing immediately because you know the game, you know what's going on, and the guys are just so tight.
And it's universal. You don't need language for
Right.
it. You don't need, and so like most of the things we're pursuing at the root, we're trying to find like universally understandable humor or themes or ideas, because it's like that's the reason to make movies.
Welcome to camp. Can I get you a Demitasse to go with your little coffee?
I'll take a hit of it.
What do you think this is?
Save this for the movie. What's so great about the way you guys work is that you make movies about guys who are presumably adults, who have all the accoutrement of being adults except for maturity.
Presumably is the key word. There's a presumed adulthood based on receding hairline. That's pretty much the only thing.
But it's just, I mean, and also I love the bookending of the film with those like 80s songs about sex.
Yeah.
And I was telling you, it reminded me of the French films, the comedies of the 70s. It also reminds me, there's a Paul Mazursky movie called Bloom in Love.
It's so funny you say
What?
that, because Kyle watched that like right as he just calls me. He goes, "You got to watch this movie right now." Like well,
Right before we were in prep. Yeah.
Wow.
That movie.
He goes, "You got to watch this Paul Mazursky movie, Bloom in Love," and I was like, "It's pretty good." I can't tell if it's like the performances are terrible intentionally or amazing. I was like, "But this movie might be a masterpiece."
It is a masterpiece. I'll clarify.
I think, but it's also, there's a line he has that the character has in the movie. He says, well,
Because it's. I'm so sorry.
It's wiggling.
Oh no! Don't let it wiggle.
yeah, maybe you'll tear the shirt, you can't give the shirt back.
Yeah, then I get to keep that.
All right.
My whole goal with Can is to destroy all the Dior clothing, so I get to keep it.
Like the tux? Yeah, please do.
Oh, the tux is definitely getting ripped. I'm splitting the pants
In
for
fact,
sure.
I sneezed on the tux, so it's infected. You can't give it back. It's got the coronavirus on it. But there's a line in Bloom in Love where George Siegel says, "If I lose my wife, I will die. I do not want to die. Therefore, I must get her back."
1,000%.
And I thought about that, especially with your
Yeah,
character.
of course. Yeah, you know, we talk about he's not necessarily a hopeless romantic, but he's a hopeless optimist, I think, which is really...
Which is also what those two songs are about, too.
Right.
About optimism.
Yeah, and I think it's mostly because he wants things to go the right way. And I think sometimes when you want things to go the right way and it's falling apart around you, you just try and hold on as much as you can. And that's a great character to put through hell. And I think that's sort of what we wanted to do, is like, great, take someone with that mentality and then just put him through all of the worst things you could imagine.
But Mike, your character, when we meet him, he seems like the most grown up of anybody. You know, he's got this very European relationship with his wife. Mm-hmm. He's got this beautiful Architectural Digest house. He's got this kid who seems to sort of behavior, so when he steals, he's not stealing boats from him.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that, and I love the pivot, the immediate pivot to infantile behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that was very much, I think, part of the impetus for why we even wanted to make this movie was like, you know, we are these people, and we know these people who everything's together on the surface. You look at the house, you look at the way they present themselves, and then but you're like, under the surface, there's something else going on. And we just loved exploring, like, I don't know, this idea that we're all sort of, the children in us who would throw temper tantrums and get upset and and hit people and because they didn't get what they wanted. It's still like there. It's just buried under this facade of sophistication and grown-upness.
But I think what's funny, and I was thinking about The Climb, that nobody is what they seem. You guys really like writing those kinds of characters, don't you? Where you get this immediate sort of vivid first impression of characters, really vivid impressions of characters who 10 minutes into the film, I don't know these people anymore.
Yes.
I want you to talk about writing characters like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's we love that the most because it happens with everyone. Everyone says something and means the absolute opposite. So part of the fun of us, of what we do in our writing process is we go to those moments of explosion, those moments that we really, really find compelling, and then we go back and say, how can we justify getting there? So there's no way a character can't make this reprehensible decision or this insane choice in this moment. It's the only thing available to them. And so we sort of walk our process that way, and it's really fun to sort of map how far we can push the audience and have them still stay on.
Yeah, it's like emotional subterfuge. You're sort of like, it's sort of like you're going, okay, we know this is going to happen. We know that this is under the surface. So what can we do to? Because that's the beauty of people. We're all walking sort of contradictions in a way. Like you look, I'm sure if we all really looked in the mirror, like we say things and we do the total opposite, and then we don't acknowledge it. We pretend like everything's fine. There's something really beautiful about a character who puts on a facade of something and then immediately becomes something else. To us, it's like there's something very human about characters like that, and I think that's what draws us to them.
And I think that's I think that's the structure too that's the structure too that we love in character arcs, which is like you don't really go through a metamorphosis into something new. You sort of just become honest about what you actually were in that first moment. You know what I mean? Or you think you're honest, but again, you're at the next layer of subterfuge.
But again, like I think at the end of The Climb, they're not different people. They haven't grown by any means.
No. But acceptance is there. A little bit of acceptance.
A tiny bit of acceptance.
Of the non-growth is there, yeah.
Well, I think what's funny about that too is that comedies are supposed to be about people who change and become, in some way or another, we get to recognize something about themselves. And this sort of balance between maturity and immaturity is that they come to recognize these things about themselves and they still don't change.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
I mean, I don't know what to say other than I agree.
But I mean, because so much of what you guys do in terms of making these films is they're also really emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, you're laughing and you're kind of thinking, oh my God, which is a really hard thing to pull off.
Yeah.
Like I think really difficult. And that's why I was asking before about rehearsal time, because in some ways, the physical activity aside, they feel like plays to me.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think we didn't have as much rehearsal time on this one as we wanted. The Climb, we had a lot of rehearsal time.
Okay.
And that was because we were doing long single takes, and it was like there was no margin for error, especially with the mise en scène and choreography of the camera movements and the blocking. With this one, just by nature of the schedule, we had less rehearsal time. I mean, we certainly took days and weeks in advance to really read through the script and put it on its feet a little bit, but it was never like a blank studio room where you could be, rehearsing dances, and all of a sudden you're sitting there for like a week, rehearsing. And so that was a good and bad thing, but I think overall, the goal is always, at least on movies moving forward, is to have a ton of rehearsal time.
Because I was going to ask you about why stylistically, because there are a lot more cuts in this than there were.
Yeah.
I was wondering what that was about.
Well, I think it would be really boring to make a film career where you just never have cuts.
So you've never seen a Woody Allen movie before?
Well, it's funny. I think Husbands and Wives was maybe not a tonal film that we looked at, but certainly like there's something very palpable in the structure and dynamic of that film that film certainly like moves through. That whole opening sequence is sort of incredible. But yeah, I mean, I think with each film, you come in with a visual approach. With this film, we were very much, with The Climb, I think we were really, really like obsessed with Claude Sauté and Pierre Tex and sort of these Maurice Pialat, and it's certainly here too. But I think with this one, we were watching a lot of Italian comedies. Like we were completely obsessed with Ettore Scola and Lena Wertmuller and Pietro Germi.
The Wertmuller comedies of the mid-'70s are incredible.
I mean,
They're the greatest movies ever. Yeah, she's my favorite
Yes.
Italian filmmaker ever, as far as I'm concerned. Seduction of Mimi, Love and Anarchy,
But the ones
swept
that,
away, and
but the ones that precede those, which are really like this movie, are slapsticky.
Totally.
People don't know about her.
yeah, I mean, look, we kind of we became obsessed with I guess what is commedia all'italiana, but those Italian comedies from really the late '60s, really the '70s, like. There was a whole generation of Italian filmmakers, and when you watch those movies, there's such cinematic ambition. Like if you watch Seduced and Abandoned, like that's one of the most cinematic films you'll ever see, and yet, or Divorce Italian Style, and at times
Boccaccio 70.
Boccaccio 70 and the Monticelli movies, like they're just remarkably cinematic, but wildly funny at the same time and absurdist. Like if Pizza Triangle is one of my favorite movies.
God, yes.
Or Drama de Jealousy and whatever, Drama of Jealousy and Other Important Things. Yeah. That movie is a masterpiece. Like we would watch that over and over and over again, both from a visual perspective, but certainly just from like the absurdity of like the theme music. How like every single time the character has an emotional thought of any sort, here comes the theme music, and it's almost in this very playful way where you're just like, this movie is just playing with the audience. And I think there's something really beautiful about making a movie that's a sort of absurdist, but reminding people that this is a movie and we're being playful with it and we can do whatever we want.
But it's funny too, because there's one scene where you go to your old apartment as you're talking to your wife. There's a piece of music that sounds almost like a Morricone sting. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really sort of specifically brought Boccaccio 70 to mind for me.
100%. I mean, I think score is so important, and we brought composers on and really brought them into the world of those movies as well, and that became the foundation for the sound and feeling of the movie. And so I think it was important for us to sort of imbue it in all aspects: the camera work, the music, the cutting styles, the patience of the comedy that all those movies had.
Because that's why I thought the cutting, because there's actually, to your point, there's a lot of cutting in those movies. Because you're constantly sort of cutting for close-ups and then to a master, then to another close-up, and there's a lot of that in this.
Well, we sort of covered this movie in a very different way that I think was a little more referential to those films, which is like these sort of wide masters or these moving kind of dynamic masters, and then these like tight, intense close-ups on these sort of wider lenses. And whether it works or not, I don't know, other people will be the judge of, but for me, it was all about like kind of getting this sort of very intense, close perspective with the characters, and you're in their space, but you're not in their space in like a beautiful long lens that kind of, that sort of mutes all the imperfection in the features, but rather quite the opposite. Like we're sort of like seeing people in this very sort of raw, realistic way and with very natural lighting. And so that felt kind of interesting in a sort of contemporary comedy, because it's just not the way that it's typically lensed, you know, and so.
No, that's it, because what's interesting about that too is using that kind of grammar and architecture. It really sort of magnifies how much Carrie is trying to hide his hurt. I mean, constantly trying to hide it. And I want to ask you about that performance too, because so often we see he doesn't know what to do with his hands.
Yes.
That's just Kyle not knowing how to act.
Now I'm just thinking, like, how many times did I just move my hands?
That's one of the first things they teach
conversation.
That was one of the first things they teach in acting class, but Kyle wasn't there that day, so he was just like,
I
his
missed
hands.
it.
Again, you do know he's sitting right here. Okay, just I can probably hear you now. But
Sorry, this is our dynamic.
no kidding. I think I got that.
We're very method.
But no, but it's compared to The Climb, where you were really active.
Yes.
And here he's like, well, after you get the news,
Right.
his arms just kind of fall limp to his side.
Yeah. I think for me, part of the fun of the way that we shoot is both the comedy and the emotion are buried, right? Like everything is just experienced as naturally and as painfully as possible. And from that, I think you get not only the emotional experience of it, but for me, I think I get the comedy from that. And so for me, that's where I go to for comedy. I go inside into that pain or into that character, and that is how I get my comedy. I'm not ahead of it thinking about what I'm doing. I'm living the uncomfortableness, and in that uncomfortableness, I find my comedy in that feeling.
I was always wondering where you find your comedy.
Well, if you're asking now, there is much too late to
find
figure this out.
his comedy?
Pain, just pain. I just find it in pain.
I can just go and get a cup of coffee and chat amongst yourselves.
I'll take the seat.
But yeah, I'm sure you will. But I think I want to talk to you about your performance too, Mike, because he's trying to offer this kind of assurance. I mean, with his movement, you know, it's really like watching a kid who's watching an adult try to act like an adult.
It's very.
Especially you see his kid like acting out in that way. And he that's when he kind of loses it before his life falls apart. But it's a really interesting physical dynamic between them because, first of all, you say call Splitsville, after that exhausting trip from the beginning of the movie where I couldn't breathe, I was laughing so hard. And then, where is he going?
Yes.
And then you show up completely disheveled and you're just like with the hands in your pockets, oh, what's going on? Yeah. I mean, I just like that you're playing an adult. Really, that's what it is for the character, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, I mean, look, there's clearly thematic sort of layers to the film of adulthood and childhood. You've got this kid who seems on the surface like the perfect kid,
and he's
just
great
a total delinquent.
But
he's like, he's on the side, he just keeps doing bad things, and you're like,
oh,
what?
The movie ends with sheer pleasure at having done this awful thing.
Yeah, and there's something really kind of, I don't know, to me, like, it answers, it's the other side of the coin and the question to a degree to my character who, really is, his father and who's like, trying to keep it together and is, but everything's blowing up under the surface. So I sort of, I don't know. For me, this character was. I understood him deeply.
Yeah.
I kind of just. I know people. I am this person in a way. Like you just. You can put on a show. You can put on a nice shirt. You can go. I have it all together, but under the surface, it's just bubbling. And I sort of loved a character who was like, I'm going to do whatever it takes at all costs to keep this facade going. And protect my family and the people I love from all the chaos on the other side of on the other side of this until it all explodes. And so, like, it's a deeply sad character, especially, I found him to be deeply sad and in that
the reveal at the end where he really isn't the sophisticated he pretends to be. It's almost like if we're designed for living, we're done by teenagers. There's nobody there.
Yeah, it's genuinely. I when we discovered that arc of that character, really both, Dakota's character and mine, in terms of what they're hiding, there was such a beauty for us. There was such a beauty because I was like, now we understand who these people are. Like once that decision to go, these are people pretending even to each other that they're very sophisticated and open and accepting, only to find out that underneath it all is a ton of insecurity and vulnerability. And there's real beauty to that. I think it's a very relatable thing, at least for me.
But in terms of the Italian stuff, you didn't think of the wardrobe because he's wearing very adult outfits and suits, and Carrie's always dressed like a kid.
Yeah.
So he's just like a 12-year-old.
Exactly right. Yeah. Well, that's just my style, but I just
tell the folks at the Dior that's
But
no, I think that's really, I mean, especially when he comes out of the water in those shorts, it looks like a kid's been out playing and got dirty all day. But even when he goes back home for the first time, he's dressed like a kid, not even a teenager, like a 12-year-old.
Yes, and I think it's something we talk about a lot, which is like who are the kids and who are the adults in the movie, and I think the kids are pretty adultish and the adults are pretty kiddish, and it's flips back and forth, and I think that's part of the fun of the dynamics at play is who's being a kid right now and who's being an adult, and no one's sort of the same at the right time. No one's both.
But for both of you guys, I mean, these Italian and French films we're talking about, at some point, you're not sure if you're watching a comedy or a drama.
Yeah.
And that happens here. I mean, it takes a bit longer here than it did for The Climb.
Yeah, because we front stacked the comedy.
Chaos.
Really, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but there's an action sequence that Tom Cruise would have been proud of. And it's you guys doing it.
Yeah.
How did you were telling me you basically had no real rehearsal time for that.
Yeah, I mean, well, we during prep, we would do our prep days. We'd go tech scout, we'd do all of our work, and then at night we would go to a climbing gym and beat the shit out of each other. And there was this whole dynamic where we would sort of unpack these sequences. We'd work with our stunt choreographer. We'd try things out, and then we would just go work it every night. It was sort of our.
We would develop almost. There'd be a little bit of a crowd develop, like surrounding. Like
at the climbing
people would
gym.
Stop bouldering, and they would just sort of stand there and watch us and go, and then they would applaud when one of us.
Someone yelled WWE in the corner.
Yeah.
But what's funny about that sequence too is that it feels like a real time thing. But by the end of it, they can barely get their hands up to swing on each other, which is where things go really awry. And that felt like really honest, because even when you see people in action films do it, they just start breathing heavy. But now they can't get their arms up to swing anymore. And that's a very specific kind of thing from that kind of exertion.
Well, I think for us it was about like what would typically happen here people would yell at each other, they would argue, they would throw daggers back and forth. It would be a conversation that goes on for hours and hours and hours. And we were sort of just like, what if there's no real words and it all comes out with physicality? Like at some point when you're in an argument or a fight about something that intense, you can't lift your arms emotionally, right? And so we were just like, how do we transpose the emotional just to the physical so it's just pure, it comes out in just a very visceral way.
And I think we treated the choreography very playfully, which was we were in the space and we were like, okay, if I was here in this moment, what would I do? And we would just look around and be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, we watched a lot of behind the scenes on Jackie Chan movies, and he was like, and apparently he would just look and he'd be like, oh, there's a plate here, I'm gonna use it this way. And we're like, okay, what's in this space?
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, that would be really funny if you grabbed that. And then our team would be like, oh, Jesus Christ, more breakaway stuff. I mean, it's like someone's gotta go find something else to shatter.
What's funny too, because the thing you think about is that you never see in independent films is slapstick. You don't ever see it. And this, I thought, oh my God. I didn't realize how much you miss that kind of thing until you see it.
Yeah.
I mean, but you don't see it anywhere anymore, really.
It's so visceral. It's so visceral. Like you go back and watch any Chaplin, you watch all these old movies, and it's instant. I'm laughing immediately because you know the game, you know what's going on, and the gags are just so tight.
And it's universal. You don't need language for
Right.
it. You don't need, and so like, most of the things we're pursuing at the root, we're trying to find like universally understandable humor or themes or ideas, because it's like that's the reason to make movies. It's not to like be zeitgeisty. Even though this movie kind of on the surface feels like it's trying to tackle zeitgeisty things, we were almost averse to making the movie for that perspective until because we don't. I don't personally. I don't know about you. Like I have very little interest in doing anything that feels like tethered to a time.
Okay.
But rather, like, way more interested in doing things that might be seem tethered to a time, but have sort of universal human, depth and understanding and comedic elements.
But I think that's what links it really to the French films for me, is that these people who have the pretense that they're living modern lives, but they're really not modern. They're really old-fashioned people who want this one thing. And the thing that links all the French and Italian films, and I think your work, is that there's constantly jealousy. There's constantly jealousy.
Yes.
Well, in life, there's constantly jealousy.
Tell us more about this movie, right?
Your suit, for example.
Yeah.
Nobody's giving me stuff, but I think that's so interesting because it's something that people look at you. Now you're afraid to talk all the time.
No, I just don't know what to do with my hands, and I'm trying to pretend like I.
Well, ask him.
Kyle knows.
I'm cool.
Oh, he missed that
I'm
day
not
in class.
moving him.
But no, I think that I would ask you where that comes from, because it is about what you don't know how to. It's one thing that I think links to adults and kids. When you're jealous, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I think by dealing with that, something that's about a very specific kind of insecurity, it links the movies, but it also makes these things unpredictable.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting? You know what's interesting when that happens, when you have jealousy, I think some of the interesting thing is like you make your gut instinct reaction, and you genuinely feel like that's the right thing to do, and it's normally the complete wrong thing to do. But in that moment, you think, oh yes, I have to do this because this is the right thing. And that like snap decision of what you think is right almost always is wrong, but in the moment feels so right. And I think that's the dichotomy of what we're trying to explore, is like that thing that feels so true and honest to your character is also dishonest in its own way.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Before we go and say one thing that you reminded me of that I want to ask you about, you shot film.
Yes.
And there's something about the look, the oil, the emulsion of that we feel in the watching of it. And that to me really cemented the connection to these old films, because film just takes life.
That's really nice to hear, because I think there was such an aspiration to really try to plant a flag to say, this film is whether it succeeds or not, is trying to reference films that are from a number of decades ago. That not that they're forgotten, but we're just not. We're part of a whole generation of filmmakers that come up on films that came way after those films, and I think, because of the themes and because of what we were, the way the characters act and the cinematic style of it, there was something really nice about just saying, let's just make sure that there's grain and imperfection and texture and that when we look at the dailies, when we get these scans back, we're going, okay, yeah, this is the movie we're making. We're not trying to artificially recreate it by adding it later. You know, we have to wait till the very end of the process and the DI. Like, everyone should know what movie we're making. And so even, you know, the cast or the crew or the producers or the studio, when they're looking at the dailies, they're going, oh, we're at least attempting to make something that you know, is referential to or has a degree of admiration for some of those 70s comedies.
I think Tom would make this quickly really the last point, which is, especially in those Italian comedies, we learn that the beautiful, sexy people are just as insecure and it happens with the women, and they.
Oh, I thought you were talking about us.
Well, you didn't let me finish my question. But that insecurity exists for everybody, which is the thing I think that made those movies finally so relatable, is that everybody was afraid in the same way. And your films are about that kind of stuff too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was important to figure out how to create connection and humanize and relate to two of the most beautiful women on planet Earth and us at the same time. You know, like how do we understand? How do we understand the emotional journey of you know, Dakota's character and Adria's character and these two schlubs across from it in the same way? And I think the idea that there's insecurity for each character and that, you know, each character is going through their own journey. Like, even when we write, I think we're always coming at it from a standpoint of like, you know, doing a pass for a character and like finding their imperfection, finding their, like, oh, okay, so we have Paul, and we've certainly got Carrie, and we've got Julie, and now it's like, okay, well, Ashley, how do we, like, she needs to have more flaw, not more flaw, but more humanity, you know, like.
Because what you're doing, and I think actors like that respond to that, is you give them something to play, instead of just posing.
Yeah, and it's so funny because it's always the same notes that. I don't want to say it's the same notes that either companies, financiers, studios, and Neon and Topic were incredible. So this isn't them, but conceptually, the things that scare them from a character standpoint in terms of likability or understanding the choice is the same thing that great actors always respond strongest to.
Is that true?
100%. Like, if we write something in a script and we're like, ooh, this is a crazy thing for this character to do, for her to make this turn or for him to make this turn or do this, like. And someone would be like, I don't understand why they do that. It's like the actors are always like, I know exactly why she does that, and it has to stay in the script.
Yeah.
And so it's this really funny thing because it's actually what attracts them to it, because they're like, oh, now I actually get to play, as opposed to, you know, a little bit more patty cake, or, you know, it's like soft decisions. It's like, no, strong, bold decisions where I have to go deep to figure out how to do that.
Well, let's let these two sexy, beautiful men go on to the next thing. Guys, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you. It's such a joy to talk to you. I've been listening to your show since college, and it's just like kind of weird to hear your voice while we're here talking.
Okay, I'll take that. That's a win.